Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you something from Morningstar. We usually talk about RJM on both the Goodwood channel and on Chairman of the Board's. Huge fans. However, Morningstar does a great job on their online editor, which I don't use all that often, and now going back to it today to do this video, they've made some awesome updates and there's a lot of cool things going on. Today, however, I'm going to address one of the biggest drawbacks that I find on their MIDI controllers, and that is that they don't have switching outputs or function jacks or amp switching jacks, whatever you want to call them. Basically, they don't have a way to emulate a physical switch closing and opening until earlier this year when they came out with their Omniport Relay Interface. I think they're calling it ORI. So we're going to go over that today. How to program tap tempo on something like a Boss DD7, and also how to control the muting and summing on our Underfacer. The reason I chose that is it's a bit more complex to implement because you have to think of a couple different things, but you can use this on like a JHS pedal with a red remote. You can switch the channels on your amp. You can do tap tempo, as I've mentioned, anything where there's external switch control of a pedal, interface, or amp. You can use this relay interface to control it with your Morningstar device. Really cool. So let's get into it quick. We aren't going to spend too long on this, but figured I'd show you what I've done to get this thing going. First, let's show you the tap tempo on the DD7 by Boss. What I've done, you can see on the top cam here, I've connected one of the expression outs or the Omniport from the MC6 into Omniport in on the relay switching interface, which is the jack you can see on the left-hand side here. Out of that, I've used a normal patch cable, just a TS patch cable to go from the out into the tap in on the DD7. I should also mention that this is a TRS cable going from MC6 to Omniport in. And we're going to keep it basic with a TS patch cable for now. And if we go over to the screen, you can see what I've done to set this up. I've basically gone into, get rid of that. I've gone into message number 1, press Morningstar Relay Interface. If you scroll down right to the bottom of the list, you'll see that there. And then Boss requires normally closed switches, which means the switch in its default state is closed, and when it taps, it actually opens and closes. Whereas the majority of pedals from other companies, the switch starts open, normally open, NO, and closes when you tap. So what you need to do now is just understand what your pedal requires. You can go to the manual if it doesn't work right out of the gate, and you can get things going. Normally closed for Boss, so we've selected that, and then we save the preset. And now we can go to tap, and whenever we tap on this switch, we should physically hear the relay in the Omniport relay switching system open and close. You should hear a click, and that will then talk to the Boss and tell it to set its tempo. Let's see if you can hear the click through my mic. If not, it's fine. Let's see if it happens. So as you can see on the Boss here, if we go really quick, you can see that tempo changing on the green light there. So the tap tempo is working. But one of my big questions here, and this took me a little bit longer than I'd like to admit to go through the manual and figure out, what if you want to set this to MIDI clock with the rest of your MIDI pedals? Maybe you have, I don't know, a chorus or a tremolo, like a Flint by Strymon that's hooked up to MIDI, and you want to just tap once, and you want the DD7 and the Flint, which is connected over MIDI, to go to the same tempo at the same time. You don't want to have to tap multiple switches to control different pedals. We can also do that. So if we go over to the next switch here on the screen, I've labeled this one clock. Message number 1, there's a couple approaches you can do to this. Message number 1, we're just going to do MIDI clock. We've set the tempo at 120, a really boring tempo. Let's actually change that. We'll change it to 121 just so it's not so predictable. I did put to show the tap menu. You don't need to do that. It basically allows you to make fine adjustments on the fly if you do that. So we'll just leave that on there for now. And that is it. So now we have clock set, and then, sorry, one more time on the screen, right below that then, we also have Omniport 1 sync clock to 8 taps. So when the MIDI clock changes or is activated, this switching interface is gonna send 8 taps at that tempo, now at 121 beats per minute. So let's give that a shot. Clock, start, exit. 7, 8. Good. 8 taps on clock. But what if you want to control your flints, in this example, the tremolo and the DD7, but you just want to tap it in? So you want to do MIDI clock to the flint, and you want to do the physical relay switching on the DD7, which is not over MIDI clock, because the DD7 doesn't take MIDI. You can very easily do that as well. Instead of MIDI clock, we're going to go to MIDI Clock Tap, save preset, and now just like the tap tempo before, we will be able to just tap in on the clock button, and whatever we tap at whatever speed, all of our inaccuracies included, is going to send to the DD7 and to any other MIDI pedals we have hooked up to our MIDI clock. ORI, the Omniport relay switching interface, is going to take the last 2 taps that we set in on clock, and it is going to send that to the DD7 with that 8 tap setting that we have set up. So let's give this a shot. Let's do a slow tap. That 8 taps feels like an eternity when you're recording a video, but it works quite well. So that's another thing you can do. I don't know if we can do just a normal tap. I actually haven't tried this. Save the preset. Oh, that's much better. Thanks, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. So now what we have done is we've just done the normal tap setting, and then we've also done the MIDI clock tap as well. So whatever we tap is going out to our MIDI connected devices, and also the ORI, which is sending tempo to the DD7. We're figuring this thing out together as we go. So that is the DD7. Now let's hook up the Underfacer. The reason I chose that is because on a tap, it will mute or unmute, but on a hold for 2 seconds, 2000 milliseconds, on a hold, you can change summing from stereo to sum and sum back to stereo. In testing before the video, there is no perfect workaround to be able to do both, but you can make it happen if you can see the LEDs and go from there. So we'll hook that up really quick. Okay, so we have Underfacer set up now, and we are going to firstly get into mute. So as you can see on the screen here, we have the Omniport set up for Omniport 1, which is what I have plugged in on the MC6. We have the tap normally open. So the switch is normally open. You hit the MC6 and it does a quick pulse. It closes the switch quickly and then opens it again. And that is really it. I've done the same thing below here. If I wanted to mess around with toggling on and off and changing messages, we could, but we're not gonna worry about that today. We'll do save preset. And then now when we hit this button up here, we should mute, the LED will come on, hit it again, we should unmute. Great, so muting is now done, but the summing, you need to actually see a hold for 2 seconds and then the switch releases. There's no easy way to do this, so what I did is just a toggle. So basically you hit the button once, the switch will close. You hit the button again, the switch will open. So you can leave it closed as long as you want, it's up to you. A little bit annoying maybe in a live situation, but just want to show you that it can be done. So here we go. Let's try and switch. We'll mute it so you can see the LED change, and we'll switch from mono, which is blue, to stereo, which should turn red. And then we can turn it back off, and now we can mute, unmute again, hit it again. Now it's switch is closed, switch is open. So that is essentially how you can do it. There are a couple ways in the Morningstar, environment to make that action happen, but that was the one that I found worked the best to keep muting and all that other stuff kind of easily accessible. Lots of things you can do with this across different pedal types. Really great product and quite easy to use once you've done a couple of commands. The thing that's really helpful with this that I'll say as well is you can actually hear the relays opening and closing in the device, so you know if you're setting it up correctly, or at the very least if it's receiving signal from the MC6. So if you hear the relay switching, you're on a great start. Hope that's helpful. Let us know in the comments if you want to see anything else from Morningstar. Again, they've done a great job with their editor, making it user-friendly, and really impressed with what they've done so far. That's it. We'll see you guys next week for another video on the Goodwood Audio YouTube channel.